Hi everyone, I'm Jane and I'm going to be talking about resistance training as a effective weight loss strategy. So today in the world there are 1.9 billion people who are overweight and obese, and for decades it's been a growing problem and it doesn't seem to be improving much. And higher weight status is often associated with an increased risk of non-communicable diseases, which is why it is such a concern. And so non-communicable diseases are diseases such as heart disease and diabetes. These are like the non-infectious diseases that are increased with higher amounts of abdominal fat surrounding the organs. And the abdominal fat kind of causes malfunction in our organs when they're surrounded by it, because they kind of secrete different compounds and just kind of make it harder for our organs to work, and then can cause us to develop a disease. And so that's why removal of excess fat in these areas is so important with weight loss, and also maintaining lean body mass or skeletal muscle, which I'll get into reasons why as we go. So just to kind of give you an idea of the difference between two different kinds of where we carry the fat. So this is an apple shape. So this is the abdominal region, carrying the abdominal region. The amount of abdominal fat compared to pear-shaped, which is carrying it more in the hip area. So abdominal fat is much less, and the outer layer, that subcutaneous, is more, which is not as concerning or damaging as this abdominal fat is. So traditional methods of weight loss typically involve calorie restriction, which unfortunately don't have long-lasting effects. So only 20% of overweight people are able to maintain 10% of weight loss after 1 year that involves this type of method. And that's often due to the accompanied losses of fat-free mass, which are things fat-free mass includes organs, bone, and skeletal muscle, which obviously we can't really do anything. We can't really lose organ or bone, but we can have an effect on our skeletal muscle with weight loss. And so it's important to maintain that skeletal muscle, because with all these three components, 60% of our metabolism comes from that. So if we lose that skeletal muscle, it's going to decrease our metabolism, or our resting energy expenditure, which is the metabolism that we have at rest. So the energy we burn when we're just sitting and burning, digesting our food, and our organs are just, doing what they do. So what is resistance training? So resistance training is any exercise that causes muscles to contract with a form of external resistance. So that could be weightlifting or using body weight exercises. And the World Health Organization actually does have recommendations to include muscle strength activities on 2 or more days for healthy adults, on top of that 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic training. And that's because there have been many benefits to resistance training. So maintaining that fat-free mass, which helps increase or improve resting energy expenditure, and it also can reduce body fat. So this is kind of a comparison of what muscle tissue looks like to fat tissue. So muscle tissue is more kind of fat, but it looks pretty like not much is going on here, but there's actually a lot of like mitochondria in here that are responsible for burning energy, and they use a lot of oxygen to burn that energy. There's just a lot of activity going on here, while fat just kind of stores our energy, but it also can secrete these harmful things into our bodies that kind of impair it from working properly. So like I mentioned, muscle uses energy or an oxygen. Those mitochondria need the oxygen to as fuel. And so that's what the effects that resistance training can have is it can improve the skeletal muscle and improve the amount of oxygen used. So if you think about it, when you breathe and you're using all that oxygen, you are burning calories. So it kind of improves it following exercise and maintains that. So there was a study on 17 males performing high intensity resistance training and traditional training, and it was assessed 22 hours following each session. And both groups were actually found to have increases in energy expenditure burning 99 in the traditional and 452 in the high intensity group, which that's just because it was more intense. And they both were found to have elevated levels of oxygen consumption, but the high intensity group actually maintained that 22 hours. So they were still burning those calories following exercise, which is very interesting. And then there was another study on morbidly obese patients on a very low calorie diet that were probably going to be receiving bariatric surgery that found that the very low calorie group had a 14.3% decrease in resting energy expenditure compared to 4.6 in the resistance training group. And this just kind of goes along with what I was saying with the traditional weight loss strategies of decreasing calories. The resting energy expenditure decreases much more, which can cause weight regain, and that's probably because they were losing that lean body mass, which you can see right here. The control group, which is that calorie group, did lose a significant amount, 4.6 kilograms of lean mass, while the resistance training group didn't have any changes. So they're able to maintain that lean body mass, which helped with their resting energy expenditure. And the resistance training group actually did have more fat loss than the control group did, which was interesting as well. So next I'm going to kind of go into the effects of resistance training on body composition, but before I do that, I just want to kind of give you a visual of the difference that 1 pound of muscle looks like to 1 pound of fat. And that kind of, oftentimes you hear people say, oh, like, I've been lifting weights, but I haven't noticed any changes on the scale, but it's not, the number on the scale won't show you what's going on in your body. So that's just something to keep in mind. So resistance training has been found to increase muscle mass and reduce visceral fat. So there was a study on overweight female patients that had type 2 diabetes, and they were found to have a 3% increase in muscle mass after 12 weeks and a significant reduction in abdominal and total fat. And there was also another study comparing the effects of diet-induced weight loss with aerobic comparing to resistance training, and the aerobic group experienced decreased fat-free muscle mass and resting energy expenditure as a result, while the resistance training group was able to maintain their fat-free mass significantly. So there are a couple limitations and things that future research should kind of consider. So many of the studies don't use resistance training alone. They often combined with calorie restriction or a supplement, and that can kind of impact the results and kind of make it unclear if what the resistance training is actually doing itself. And so kind of just having studies with resistance training alone will help bring that out more. And then the study samples are often too small. There's also often it's on obese individuals alone, and it would be useful to kind of look at just healthy individuals and the effects that it has on normal weight individuals as well as overweight individual populations. And there's also kind of inconsistency in the types of resistance training used. There's different, like the high interval training that I mentioned before. So kind of just using one method to kind of compare between different studies. And then there's also age and gender differences in body composition that, men carry different amounts of muscle than women do, and same goes for different age groups. And so just overall, there needs to be more research investigating the impact of resistance training on body composition and long-term weight and health outcomes associated with that. But the main takeaway is that incorporating resistance training does have many benefits, and it should be added to as a weight loss or weight maintenance intervention, because of its effects on body fat, which can improve our health because it'll decrease the inflammation that comes from that, and the effects on our organs. And also maintaining that fat-free mass and improving our resting energy expenditure to help us maintain our weight. That's all I have.